Hey y'all, welcome to another playthrough of mine. This is a hidden gem for the Super NES and for the PC. Gem Power, The Lost Dimension in 3D. Though it's a mostly 2D game. Here we have a bare bones options menu. Just 3 difficulty selections and explain the controls at the top. You're going to want to choose easy, for the only difference between that and the harder difficulties is the amount of continues you have. It's not like the enemy placements are any different, that they receive any more hits, or even that you start off with a different amount of lives. Continues is the only difference them difficulties have. And given that this is one of the most difficult games on the Super NES, if not all time, you're going to want all the continues you need. So as you see here, this is a side-scrolling run-and-shooter game. It's a little bit like Contra or Mega Man, a little bit like those games. Although, one iffy thing about this game, you are not really able to move and fire at enemies at the same time. I mean, if you hold X, which is rapid fire, like the footage is showing now, you can sluggishly make it to the end. But given how much slower it is, yeah, not the best controls in the world. You also press Y to fire into enemies, although it is not rapid. Although, if you mash Y enough, you are able to fire faster than had you been holding X. So you have Gem Power, The Lost Dimension in 3D. I'm just gonna refer to it as Gem Power from here on. I received this game as a gift when I was 6 or 7, back during 1997. I spent quite a bit of time on this game, back when the only thing I had for the N64 was Super Mario 64. I had games like this, Donkey Kong Country 3, and some others that slipped my mind that spent a lot of time on the SNES. Still spent more time on the system. First, still at about 25 games on the console. I remember enjoying it back then, but there's so much friggin' trial and error. You know how many times I heard the cry of death Jim makes? And here we have our first boss, which is honestly really easy. Very easy to pick up on its pattern. Just jumps forward twice, and then another couple of jumps away from you. Aim for the head that constantly extends towards the ground. I've rarely ever died from that boss. I say that this game is really friggin' brutal, and it is, although it does still manage to be generous in a few ways, like with the amount of lives you start off with, and if you end up dying, you'll only end up going back about half a screen, so you're not sent back to the beginning of the stages. And of course, the mention of continues. Still, that does not help a whole lot. I mean, Ghosts and Goblins had infinite continues. That didn't stop it from being one of the most difficult games ever. Those blue gem things, they don't do any good outside of giving you points. I would try to collect every and any one of them as a kid, and I still kind of do in the first stage, but after that, in the end, they're just points. And though you do have a screen that shows the high scores, like with a lot of retro games, once you turn off the console, it'll end up resetting, therefore your score doesn't really matter. Well, I should say it doesn't matter, but it will not be remembered by unless you write it down. I'm probably making it look, well, I shouldn't say easy, but nowhere near as brutal as I'm making out to be. But the thing is, I must have played through this level dozens of times. Definitely tried going through this level hundreds of times during my childhood. As difficult of a game it was, I find it to be a fun kind of hard. More so back then. If you see some pro playing through this game, believe me, it's a lot more difficult than it looks. Although later on it will look pretty damn difficult in the first place. As you see, you are collecting upgrades with Jimmy Jim. If you try to collect everything from those things, you also are able to collect smart bombs, which is more like summoning 5 fireballs than nuking the screen, so it's a bit underwhelming. Although, if you do know how to use it properly, it certainly can save you under certain circumstances. Flying shellfish. This one will actually pose a threat. Simply aim for the eye, like an abundance of Zelda bosses. And right there, I'm constantly mashing Y, which again does fire more rapidly than had you press X. I've also gone through this boss multiple times. Do understand it, and that you're able to ascend low enough to land some hits on its eye, yet its attacks will constantly miss you. Be cautious though, for it'll crush you if you are not cautious. Seriously, for a 1993 game, this is, for the most part, gorgeous. I like a lot of the designs. It definitely has some 3D aspects to it, both when it comes to its layers of background and in stages like this. Although one thing about the graphics is that while it is a really good looking SNES game, it is also lacking in animations when it comes to some bosses, some enemies. Like their sprites feel rather incomplete. I will point those out as I go through, but here we have a Labyrinth level and this level. This level, I mean, I don't hate it, but I was stuck on here for, when did I get here? Where I was 8 or 7. I was stuck on this level for 15 to 16 whopping years. And that's because of one thing. You have to make sure you use the keys on the right doors, which looks more like electricity than doors. But I digress. Here comes the rant. This level had me stuck for at least 15 years, all because I did not realize, or if I did realize, I didn't pay good attention. You could just simply press select, or whatever the PC equivalent of select is, and make sure you open the right ones. Make sure you use the keys in the right places. Otherwise, you are stuck. All the keys in this maze you're gonna need every single one of them. There's no more than what you truly need. So yeah, use a key in the wrong place once, you are pretty much effed. So I had to go through this as a kid, over and over and over, trying to memorize which ones to open, which ones to leave be and come back to later. For you are gonna have to open up all of them eventually, make it down to the next level, and hope you'll memorize it there. There are 3 different levels of mazes in part 2. I don't know if I've ever made it past this section, which is still very much like a maze. The last one we'll see in a few minutes will actually be a linear path, although at the end it will still throw you off which ones to open, and I definitely never made it farther than that when I was a kid. Only until I replayed this game a few weeks ago have I been stuck on this damn maze. But yeah, you get the point. Just be sure to pay attention to the map. I mean, otherwise it's really not that difficult. It says someone you couldn't make more progress for that long. But this is one of the easiest stages otherwise. I mean, sure you have those obstacles, but you could just simply shoot him down and jump over whatever those red marks are supposed to be. There aren't any enemies or anything to face you. Just an abundance of blue gems, some keys, spikes, and records, doors. Wait, why'd I say just? Like there's an insignificant amount of obstacles. It even gives you a lot of lives, so you can max out pretty easily, as long as you don't make the same constant mistake my child self did. And the white floor is apparently ice. For once you're on it, you slip into the direction you are facing. So that's one thing to consider. I recommend just jumping over them if possible. I did not look forward to this as a child, but now I sort of like these bird eye view levels. They're certainly not the best part about the game, but I enjoy them enough. They're not too frustrating either, outside of using keys in the wrong place, of course. While this is one of my least favorite tracks in the game, that part of the song is pretty damn catchy. Some of the later stages tracks sound pretty kick-ass, I must say. And here is the more linear part of the... Now this game was originally released for the Amiga and PC there too, and only now did it. You have invincibility frames for a few seconds. Take advantage of them. That's the one thing every 90s kid should know. As I was saying, this game originally released for the Amiga about a year or so prior to this game. When it comes to the 2D sections, it reuses the same design, although you are playing as a different looking character. It uses the same tracks, although because it pretty much uses just the jetpack and the jogging segments of the game, it is about half the length of this game. So just us SNES game owners get to experience more of this game. So yeah, I have never played that version, although it certainly looks less brutal. It certainly comes closer to holding your hand than this game ever will. Time is certainly the last thing you want to worry about. You can run out of time, as you might assume, although especially in this one, there are an abundance of clocks to pick up. And even if for whatever reason you run out of time, you'll pretty much start from where your corpse once was, and the time will reset to the highest setting. So there's that.